Assalamu alaikum and welcome dear students into this series of lectures on Physics F.Sc part 1. In this series of lectures I will follow the book from Punjab Textbook Board and I will cover all the topics starting from chapter 1 till the last chapter of this book. And to make it easy for you, I will also add at the end of each lecture some pictures of the topic which I covered from the book so that you can compare that you are following the same book which I am following. So today we will start with the chapter 1, which is about the measurements. Mm, and we will start the first topic of this chapter. However, instead of directly going to first topic, I would like to give you a brief summary of the chapter, what you will learn in this chapter, and topics will be covered in this chapter. So first I will add a brief summary about the main topics which will be covered in this first chapter. So first we will get some introduction to physics. Then we will get some introduction to basic quantities. And what are these basic quantities? So for example, the basic quantities are, for example, we have mass is a basic quantity. Similarly, we have time is a basic quantity, and similarly we have current, which is also basic quantity. So we will learn about these basic quantities as well as about their units. For example, the unit of mass is kilogram, the unit of time is second, and the unit of current is ampere. So we will learn about the basic quantities as well as about their units. Then we will learn about the errors, and here we will learn about the difference between systematic error versus random error. And we will learn about the difference between precision versus accuracy. So these are some main topics which we will cover along with other topics also. So these are some main topics about which you will learn in this first chapter of measurements. So this is kind of brief summary of a whole chapter, whatever you will learn. And the first topic of this chapter is introduction to physics. So that is the first topic. And if you see your book, then before this topic there you will find some history of science. So to understand to get basic introduction of physics, it's important to have some basic knowledge about the history of science, where the science has originated from and where does the physics come from. So we will also start then from the brief history of science. So first we will start with so if you want to learn about brief history of science, then we have to go back to the time when there was no knowledge about anything, there was no science, there was no knowledge about any other thing. These were very early days, some 6,000, 7,000 years ago, when people start actually asking the questions about the activities which were happening around them. For instance, they start questioning about why it's dark in the evening and it's bright during the day. So why it's dark in the evening and why it's bright during the day. Then they start questioning why and how does it rain. Then they start questioning about what are the stars, the stars which they see in the on the in the evening on the sky. So they start asking these questions about all these things which were happening around them, and they try to find the answers of those questions. So to find these answers, they started developing certain rules and principles to find the answer of these questions. And during the so from these laws and these certain principles, a field was emerged, and they named this field as a natural philosophy. So if we go a little bit down, so a new field was emerged, and the new field was named as a natural philosophy. However, here there is a slight mistake in your book. So let me first type it: natural philosophy. So on your textbook, it's mentioned that natural philosophy is a discipline of science, which is actually not true, because like I have briefly explained you the history. So natural sciences was the initial field, the field which was emerged, and the science was actually emerged from the natural philosophy. So is science was deduced from the natural philosophy. So natural philosophy is not discipline of science. In fact, it's other way around, that science was deduced from the natural philosophy. And to make it even more clear for you, I can give here the methods, what method we use in natural philosophy and what method we use in science. Then this will make you understand better that these two disciplines are completely different disciplines. They are not the same disciplines, and natural philosophy is different than the science. So to make this difference clear, let me explain you the difference between the methods. So we start with the natural philosophy. So what happens in the natural philosophy is that we start in the natural philosophy we start from questioning. So we start from questioning, like I mentioned, that people start questioning about different activities which were happening around them. So in natural philosophy, we start with questioning, and after when we question, then what we do that we start critical discussion after questioning. We start critical discussions, and after critical discussions, we start then formulate some rational arguments. And from these rational arguments, we then draw the conclusions, or we extract the results, and these results are presented systematically or communicated. So we can say systematic presentation of results. So these are the steps for natural philosophy when we want to do things under natural philosophy. Contrary to that, when we are doing science, so in that case, we start with observations. For example, we observe that the day is bright. So this is our observation that the day is bright. Then we start kind of developing an hypothesis about why the day is bright. So we develop an hypothesis about observation, and then we test this hypothesis through experiments. We perform certain experiments and we try to check if our hypothesis is correct. And during these experiments, we collect data and we do the data analysis. And after data analysis, we draw the conclusions. And then, just like natural philosophy, we systematically communicate the results or present the results. So now here, if you see the difference between the main difference between these two fields, science and natural philosophy, is here. So in science, we do the experiments and we do the data analysis to test our hypothesis. Contrary to that, in natural philosophy, we do not have any experiments, we do not have any data analysis, we just do the critical discussion and we then formulate rational arguments and we draw the conclusion from these arguments. So that is big difference. So in science, you cannot draw the conclusions until unless you have performed some experiments and you have done some data analysis. So that's the scientific method. What are the steps? We start with observation. We could formulate an hypothesis. From hypothesis, we perform experiments to test our hypothesis, and then during experiments we get data and we analyze this data, and from this data analysis we draw the conclusions. While in natural philosophy, we have simple method. What we do, we question about different things. For example, we question that why the day is bright, and then we start critical discussion about that. Different people give different opinion, and then we form rational arguments, and from these arguments we draw the results. So that is a big difference between science as well as a natural philosophy. So this is not in your course, but I just wanted to make it to explain you so that you better understand what is natural philosophy and what is science. So when the field of natural philosophy was emerged, then after that, again, with every passing day and every passing decade, there was an increase in knowledge. More and more knowledge was coming up, and in this way, till the end of 19th century, 18th century, there was already so much knowledge that it was very difficult to have this as one field. So what people then decided, what they did is they split this knowledge into two fields. So what they did, they had two fields. The first field was, they name it as a biological sciences, and second field they named it as physical sciences. So in biological sciences, what we can define it as, the biological sciences are excuse me, the sciences where we study the living things. For example, then these are the fields. For instance, we can say that we have biology, where we study the living things. Then we have zoology. Then we have botany. While contrary to that, physical sciences are the sciences or where we can define it as a study of non-living things. For example, when you want to study um, about matter, about chemical compounds, about the uh, different planets. So these are non-living things. So this the study of these non-living things will be covered in physical sciences. And what are the major fields of physical sciences? So just like in biological sciences, we have biology, zoology, or botany, etc. In physical sciences, the major field is physics. Then we have chemistry. Then we have, for example, geology, etc. So these are a definition of physical sciences and biological sciences. So because there was huge plethora of knowledge, and then the people divided this knowledge into two fields. In one field they said, okay, all the topics, all the subjects which are dealing with the living things, they will be covered in biological sciences, while all the fields which are dealing with the non-living things, they will come under under physical sciences. And the physical sciences are, for instance, physics, chemistry, and biology. While the sorry, in physical sciences we have physics, chemistry, and geology, while in biological sciences we have biology, zoology, and botany, etc. So no, because like I mentioned that in physical sciences, physics is the most important subject. And like I mentioned that in if we go above again where I have explained the science, so I mentioned that in science, experiments and data analysis is very important. So whenever we want to do science, we need to make sure that we do the experiments and we collect the data and do the data analysis. So that is very important and vital part of science. So since it's a very important part of science, and for performing precise experiments and doing precise data analysis, we need to have precise measurements. We need to know about different measurement techniques. We need to know about different data recording techniques, so that the experiments which we are performing, they are correct, as well as the data which we are recording is correct, because from these experiments and from this data we actually deduce the draw the conclusions. That's why in this chapter of measurements we will learn about experimental techniques, or we can say measurement techniques. It's better to write it as measurement techniques. Yes, let me take the color. So we will take measurement techniques as well as data recording techniques. So that's why they name this chapter also as a measurements, because it's very important. This is kind of basic of a physics or science. So we need to know about different measurements and different measurement techniques, as well as we need to know about data recording techniques. So Now, after learning about the brief history of science, now we are ready to start off our main topic, that is introduction to physics. So, just like in the first part of this lecture, I explained about the division of a field science into two fields, that is biological sciences and physical sciences. What happened that with the time, when the science and technology keep on further progressing and new innovations keep on coming, then there was again the need to divide the field into two different fields. So this time they further divided these fields and they named it as a fundamental sciences and applied sciences. So what is fundamental sciences and what are the applied sciences? Fundamental sciences are the sciences which actually also known as basic sciences. So they are also called as basic sciences, and these are the sciences where we aim to understand the basic questions, to find the answers of basic questions. So we can say that fundamental sciences address the basic questions or try to find the answer of basic questions. So So what can be these basic questions? So for example, a biologist would like to know, for example, how a complete human body is developed from a single cell. So if we because if we know that how human body is developed from single cell, so that is a basic question. We want to understand how it's possible that from single cell, and the birth process of a human starts from a single cell, and then from this single cell we have a complete body which have multiple organisms. For example, we have a heart, we have lungs, we have eyes, we have hands, we have every organism. So how these all these organisms, the entire organisms and the entire body is developed from the single cell. So this is a fundamental question which a biologist would like to find the answer. Similarly, a physicist would like to know what is the origin of this universe. Where does this universe comes from? What is the origin of this universe? For example, this is a basic question which a physicist want to find the answer of this question. Similarly, a chemist would like to find the answer of try to understand or find the answer of the question that what is the basic structure of a molecule. So a chemist would like to know the basic structure of molecules so that he can understand how these molecules interact with each other and form different materials around us. So these are the fundamental questions what we try to find the answer in fundamental sciences. So what we define fundamental science as the science or the field of science which tries to answer the fundamental questions, like I have given examples here. Contrary to that, the applied sciences, these are the actually sciences which use the knowledge from the fundamental sciences. So the knowledge, just a second. So the uh, Applied sciences, they use the knowledge which they extract this knowledge from the fundamental sciences, the knowledge which is coming from the fundamental sciences. They use this knowledge and they apply this knowledge to real life problems and find its a solution. Find these solutions. What can be these problems and what can be the solutions? For example, we want to travel, and for traveling we need to develop a car. So the development of car, this this will be covered in applied sciences, because for developing a car you are using the knowledge which is coming from the fundamental sciences, and based on this knowledge you are developing a car. Similarly, nowadays it's corona situation, and during corona time we want to develop a vaccine. So So again, for developing a vaccine, we are taking the knowledge which is coming from fundamental sciences, for example, biology, and then we are using this knowledge to develop the vaccine. So these are the examples of real world problems and their solutions. So what we get from this, that in applied sciences we do not investigate any questions or something. We just take the knowledge from fundamental sciences and we use this knowledge and we develop the solution for the real world problems. For example, I gave example, we want to travel, so we need to find a solution of this problem, that we want to travel, so we need to develop a car, so we will develop a car. We need to fly, so we need to develop an airplane. Similarly, we have a problem that there's a disease called COVID-19, so we need to develop a vaccine for that. So all these things where we are developing new things to solve our real world problem using the knowledge of fundamental sciences, these are called applied sciences. So the fundamental sciences are physics. Physics is the most fundamental sciences of all the sciences. Then we have biology, we have chemistry. So these are the fundamental sciences which try to find the answer of a fundamental question. So in the first part of this lecture, we divided the knowledge into two fields: biological sciences and physical sciences. And now we are dividing again the sciences into fundamental and applied sciences. Now in fundamental sciences, we have all these subjects: physics, biology, and chemistry, while in applied sciences, you have all these engineering fields. For example, you have electrical engineering, you have mechanical engineering and mechanical engineering, etc. So these fields are called applied sciences field. So that is the difference between fundamental sciences and applied sciences. So in fundamental sciences, what we are in current era, what we try to address in fundamental sciences. So in fundamental sciences, we are at the moment addressing or targeting three areas. So we have divided all the problems into three areas and we try to address them. So what are these three areas or three frontiers which fundamental science deals? One is the problems of extremely large things. So let me take another color. So we have extremely large things. For example, what are these extremely large things? We have, for example, galaxies, we have planets, we have stars, etc. So all the problems which belong, all the questions, all the questions about all these extremely large things, for example galaxies, etc. This is one part. Then the second part is to find answers about extremely small things, extremely small things which we cannot even see with human eye. For example, we want to know about the subatomic particles, for example, let's say electrons or protons, or even smaller than these, we want to know about quarks. These are all subatomic particles, as well as Higgs and bosons. So these are very, very small fundamental particles, and when we want to find the answer of these questions, they also come into fundamental sciences. And then the third frontier which fundamental science deals is middle-sized. Middle-sized things which are starting from molecules until going to the size of Earth size, for example. So fundamental science is dealing these three frontiers. The one is very extremely large things, which are our planets, our galaxies, stars, and all these things which are extremely large. And then we have, on the other hand, extremely small things which we cannot even see. We have subatomic particles, we have very tiny proteins which are sometimes even smaller than 10 nanometer, which are very, very smaller. And then we have the third frontier is middle size things, which are the size ranging from the size of molecule till the size of Earth. So all these things are come into the middle science range. So all these three frontiers which fundamental sciences are dealing, physics is part of all of them. So physics is also involved too in finding the answer of extremely large things, and physics is also involved in finding the answers of extremely small things, and physics is also involved in finding the answers of middle science thing. That's why I said here that physics is the most fundamental science, because it is involved. For example, here when we have tiny proteins, we try to find answer with biology, but there also we need to have the knowledge of physics. So physics is involved in all finding the answers of questions about all these three fields. So what is physics? Then the main question comes, what is physics? Go to the next page. So first we have to see, we can clean a little bit this page, and then we start to finding the answer of what is physics. So the definition of physics is that it's the study of interaction of energy and matter. So question is, what is physics? So the definition of a physics which we have mainly or generally known as is, physics actually is the study of matter and energy. And so physics is study of so now the question is, what is matter, what is energy, and the fundamental laws which governs, and what's the interaction between them, and the fundamental laws which govern this interaction. So study of matter, energy, and interaction between matter and energy. between matter and energy, and what are the fundamental laws which govern the interaction this interaction between matter and energy. So the study of this is called physics. Now the important question is, why matter and why energy? What is this matter and energy, why it's important, and we call that physics is a study of matter and energy. Now we know that in the first part of lecture I mentioned that a physicist would like to know about what is the origin of this universe, where this universe has come from. So to find the answer of this question, the scientists came with the theory of Big Bang. What is Big Bang? The scientists think that the origin of our universe is a Big Bang. Big Bang was a huge explosion which took place some 13.5 billion years ago. And as a result of this huge explosion, all these planets and stars and galaxies came into being, and Earth was also one of the planets which came into being as a result of this Big Bang. However, then the question comes, what was before the Big Bang and how does the Big Bang happen? So that is a very fundamental question. And then scientists think that before the Big Bang there was only energy in the form of light. So there was nothing, but there was only energy in the form of light. So you can say there was only light. And what happened then, due to the changes in temperature, the light will convert into matter and antimatter. And again, when matter will interact with antimatter, it will again result in the form of photon, which is light. So you can directly say that again, when matter will interact with the antimatter, then it will result with light again. So you can see that we had light, and from light, due to changes in temperature, they will emerge matter and antimatter, and when matter and antimatter, they will interact with each other and we will get again light. So this interaction, how the light is converted into matter and matter is converted back into light, and what is this interaction? So that is the basic question. And in physics, what is physics? Physics, we try to study this interaction. What is the interaction of light and matter? So that is what we call the physics. So now I hope the definition of physics should be clear. Again, these things are not from your course book, just to explain for you what is physics and what is the study of matter and energy. I have given you these examples so that you can better understand what is the physics and why we call it that it's the study of matter and energy. So physics is a study of matter and energy, and in physics there are two eras are very important. One era is called Newtonian era. This is the era when Newton gave his laws of motion, for example, and gravitation, etc. So Newton was a scientist who gave different laws. He was a scientist in 16th century, and he gave different laws and principles, and he gravitational laws. So he gave different laws and he explained the physics. And then after his laws and principles, people start thinking that there is no more physics left, and people start thinking that Newton has given answers to all the questions about physics. So we do not have any more questions about physics. So physics is now dead. However, later, and this era is called Newtonian era. And later in 19th century, in 20th century, early 20th century, in 1905, a new scientist, his name was Albert Einstein. Albert Einstein published 3 to 4 papers in 1905, and he gave new theories, and his theories have completely changed the concept of science. And then people realized that physics is not dead, or physics has not ended, but in fact physics has not even started, because it's such a huge field and there is so much to understand. The only 3 to 4 theories which Albert Einstein gave, they were such a huge theories that you need a lot of plethora of knowledge to understand those theories. And then a new era of science, a new era of physics, in fact, started, and this era is called era of Einstein. And due to this era of Einstein and theories of Einstein, there were so many new fields emerged in the field of physics. So, for example, you have quantum mechanics, you have classical physics, you have nuclear physics, you have particle physics, and so on and so forth. So there are so many fields which emerged after the theories of Albert Einstein. So all these theories resulted all the new fields of physics. So now we have so many new branches of physics where we deal in different topics of physics. And like in the previously I explained that physics is the most fundamental science, and the principles of physics are also used for understanding the problems or finding the solution of problems of biology and chemistry and other fields. So the rules, the fundamental principles and laws which are defined by the physics, they are used in the other fundamental sciences also to find their answers. So that's why physics is also an overlapping field. So as a result of these principles, we have also other fields which are kind of overlapping fields with other sciences. We call it, for example, we have biophysics, where you use the principles and laws of physics in biology to find the answer of fundamental questions. Similarly, we have medical physics, where you use principles of physics to find on solution of medical problems. Similarly, you have astrophysics and chemical physics, etc., etc. So there are so many overlapping fields also where you use the principles of physics to solve the problems of physics. Sorry, problems of those corresponding fields like biology, like chemistry, like medical science, and then astrophysics, astrology. So these are different topics which where physics has overlapping. So as a result of this overlapping of physics, the new fields emerge. So at the moment we have so many branches of physics as well as the overlapping branches of physics, like I mentioned here. So, and now all these science and technology which around us we see around us. So this is also all this all we can say that the credit goes to physics. For example, nowadays we have a smartphone in our hand, and for these smartphones or laptops, these are very common now, and everybody have them in there. Today we have everybody, nearly everybody has smartphone or a laptop, etc. And the basic of these laptops or smartphones is a small chip, and these computer chips in which you can store so much data and you can design so many circuits on them. And these chips are made of semiconducting materials, semiconductors, and these semiconductors are uh, are dealt by solid state physics. So you can see then again that everything which you see around you, all the new innovations what are happening, they are all the credit goes to the physics. So like I have given just an example of a smartphone, and for the smartphone the most important thing is chips, which are produced from the wafers, and these wafers are semiconducting materials, and these materials are actually under solid state physics. You try to understand the solid state, the semiconductor materials, and then based on this knowledge you can produce the chips, and from the chips you can produce smartphones. So the purpose of this example is just to tell you that physics is behind every technology which we have today. So that's why it's very important to understand the physics carefully, and to know about the physics. So this is a brief introduction of physics. So I will at the end again summarize what we have covered in this lecture. We have covered brief history of science, where we started from the very early time when people started to thinking and trying to question different activities which were happening around them. And then from these activities they and a field was emerged which was named as a natural philosophy. And then from the natural philosophy the knowledge was grown so much that they had to divide this knowledge into two fields. One was biological sciences, and the other one was biological sciences, and the other one was physical sciences. And from these biological and physical sciences, in biological sciences they put all those subjects which deal with the living things, and in physical sciences they put all those fields which deal with non-living things. And from the in biological sciences we can have the fields, for example, where we say biology, we have similarly we have zoology, we have botany. So for example here, and then we have in physical sciences we have physics, we have chemistry, and we have geology, etc. So these are the physical sciences. Then later we said in the introduction of physics, we found that again the field of science, because with the time, the more innovation in science and technology we got, we again have to divide the field into two fields. So one, we had a field where we try to find answers of the fundamental questions, and we named this field as a fundamental sciences. And then we had another field of science where we try to use the knowledge from fundamental sciences and try to find the solution of the problems of this world. These problems kind of, for example, we want to make machine to check blood pressure. So this is an applied field. We use the knowledge from fundamental sciences and we try to find the solution of the real world problem, and we want to make a machine. So this will come under applied sciences. Similarly, if we want to make a wristwatch, so this is again under the applied sciences. So we will use the knowledge from fundamental sciences and we apply it to the find the solution of the problems. So we have these two divisions of fields. We have fundamental sciences and we have applied sciences. Physics comes under fundamental sciences because in fundamental sciences we try to find the answers of fundamental questions. And then in fundamental sciences because when we want to find the answer of basic questions, then there are different things around us about which we want to find the answer. There are very extremely large things, there are extremely small things, and there are middle-sized things. So we want to find answer of the questions about these extremely large, extremely small, and middle-sized things. And physics is involved in all of it to find the answer of the questions about all of these different dimensions. So then we define that what is physics. Physics is the study of matter and energy. So why we said it's matter and energy? So I explained you that before the Big Bang, since there was only light, and from light we due to change in temperature, the light will convert into matter, and again matter will convert back to light. So this play between light and matter is very important to understand. So in physics we try to understand this interplay between matter and energy. And physics initially was one field, and in 16th century, based on the laws of Newton, it was thought that physics is not such a big field, and everything has been already answered, and there's no more physics. But later in 20th century, Albert Einstein gave some new theories. As a result of these new theories, there are so many new branches of physics which are dealing different topics. For example, we have quantum mechanics, we have classical physics, nuclear physics, particle physics. All these different branches of physics are trying to solve different, finding the answer of different questions. And then, since the principles of physics are used to find the solution of other problems, so that's why we also have some overlapping branches of physics. For example, we have biophysics, we have medical physics, we have astrophysics, we have chemical physics, etc. And physics is nearly used in every modern technology what we are using. We are using smartphone, and we are using laptops, tablets, all these things. The credit goes to the physics, because the materials which are used to produce smartphones and tablets and laptops, they are all coming they are all due to the physics, because in physics we have investigated those materials, did research of those materials, and these materials are now used for in the modern technology. So that's brief introduction about physics. I hope you have understood a little bit about physics and what is a physics, and what are the main topics which we cover in physics. So in case you have any question, please write them in the comments. I will try to answer those questions. Thank you very much for your attention.